thing seems to be working. Yeah? Cool. Behind that is a few $1 million spent in fraud defense services. And we're going to take you through the journey of how we are going to let you protect your communities for things that are different than one token, one vote. Right? You want to do one person, one vote. Quadratic funding, quadratic voting, you need sybil defense. So with Gitcoin, we're just helping you fund what matters. That's our big thing right here. We create solutions to empower your community to do that. And we're going to talk about what you actually need, because there's tons of tools that let you allocate capital, right? We have plenty of DAO tools, let people make some decisions together, but what are the rules? What is the smart contract set up for how we distribute the funds? Well, there's also people in DAOs. Is anybody here in a DAO and you have to distribute the funds in fair ways? Okay, that's more allocation of funds. You could think of the allocation of funds using one of these mechanisms within a corporate innovation department. You think of a government using this mechanism. If you participate in making or designing the rules that more than one person come together to allocate a pool of funds, you're a program manager in our marketing terms. So there's that. It was well thought out, okay? And what does a program manager do? They fund what matters. Your community has a pool of funds. It needs to be democratically distributed. So that means it's not just Evan going and saying, this is how we're going to distribute it. And hopefully it's not just Evan and Pete going, hey, this is how we are going to distribute it. But it's going to be some form of all the people in that community who have the legitimate right to be there and have a decision in that, because that's what consent of the governed is. So what kind of fairness are they looking for? Well, they're looking for consent of the governed. They want to have a voice in the democratic process. They want those decisions to be community. And when a decision gets made or a rule is said to be broken and they say, we're not going to count your vote, well, they want that to be applied equally across everyone in the community, right? This is a new opportunity to redefine those systems where just because we don't look the same or we don't have the background that's the same, the law gets applied to you differently. So when we talk about gaining a community's trust, we're talking about Gitcoin building systems that allow you to equally apply the law across behaviors and ban behaviors, not people. A few other things that you're going to think about are like, who's in this community, right? We have this term we call sybils, and if you're in Web3, have you heard the term sybils? Yes? Okay, keep it up if you know what that means. Okay, so we want to say contributors are valuable to the ecosystem or they're not, but it's more complex than that. You have type 1 and type 2 errors that you're going to run into. And this is the problem that many communities are facing. They're trying to figure out how to identify sybils, non-valuable people versus valuable people. But what's actually happening is we approach the type 1, type 2 errors because of the way people interact with this. For example, our first personality is a noob. How many of you are noobs now? Brave, love it. New to Web3, how much on-chain history do you have as a noob, right? Maybe when you found out about it, you had one friend who said, hey, come do this, donate to this. This is why you want to be a Gitcoin. If the UX is terrible, you probably aren't going to fight over it, right? And you wouldn't pay $20 per transaction, right? Who here has paid $20 per transaction and been like, yeah, I guess whatever. Yeah, noob's not going to do that, okay? So we start to identify what a noob looks like, right? And they're valuable to the ecosystem. We could stop every single sybil attack today by cutting off access to the noobs, right? They're the ones that look like fake new accounts. So we have this quadratic voting mechanism, quadratic funding mechanism that gives more preference to the many than the few and wealthy. But to do that and get rid of all of them, if you think of it just as stopping bad guys, you're going to disempower the people the algorithm is literally created to empower. So it's very easy to do it wrong when you're trying to do something like sybil defense, because what we're doing isn't defending. What we're doing is actually empowering communities to have fair elections and fair votes in how they determine how they're allocating capital. And this all happened behind the scenes in a proprietary way with Gitcoin in the past. We had to go out and distinguish these personalities. A farmer, they're not malicious, but if they donate a lot in Gitcoin grants hoping to get an airdrop, well, they're going to skew the way the vote allocates. You know, they only care about one airdrop, but who the fuck am I to say like they can't want an airdrop? Like somebody in a place in the world where they're not earning nearly as much as we are here, that could be life-changing money for them. And I'm just going to go and say, we're going to ban that person from the ecosystem? Like, fuck that. That's not what we're doing. The next thing we got to look at is, well, who is malicious? Attackers are malicious, right? They're actually trying to steal your funds. They want their donations or their votes to count, and they will jump through the hoops to do it. Hoops like collecting our passport stamps or whatever NFTs you say they have to hold to be counted. They're likely to only fund their project. They have maybe some grants that they're trying to allocate funds to. They may actually study for weaknesses. I've seen plenty of testing that they've done, just running different algorithms, trying to hit the network directly, going around the UI. Every round, they test new things. We develop new answers. And this is the fundamental problem, right? What we have today is one token, one vote. It's not exciting. We know it's not the only potential. So how do we move to this new era where we can have high resolution democracy that prefers the individuals over the wealthy, right? Many over the few here. First thing you gotta say is, will they attack? Yes, they will attack, okay? We call it the fraud tax. This is like if we didn't take any measures and then after we do take measures, what's the delta? And you see that a few grants lose some money, but many grants gain a little bit back that they wouldn't have had if people were stealing those funds. We gotta define who we're going after too. The bots and the bad actors here. This is round 14, and I think every edge indicates 1,000 transactions. So there's a lot of data here, right? It just crashes your browser every time. So that's why I went with round 14 instead of round 15. But we gotta get through that and find some of this, bad behaviors. This is people who only have one difference in each letter. It's a thing Omni over here brought in. As a data scientist, he brought in the Levenstein distance, saying like, if I make a count, Disruption Joe 1, Disruption Joe 2, Disruption Joe 3, Disruption Joe 4, and we all donated to the same grants in the same way, it's probably simple, right? However, Disruption Joe 69 is a really funny guy, and he had that for a long time, right? 3 years, he's a native. We want to make sure we don't classify him wrong either. So we have to identify a bunch of single behaviors. This was made using Rafferty, open source time series GraphDB. Really cool tool. A group called Prometry worked with us on it. You're identifying behaviors, motifs that are anomalous or seem sybil, and then you say, oh, maybe this wallet is something that should be flagged based on this one behavior. We need data scientists to come in and say, what are the anomalies? What you're looking at here is some representations of our donor DNA, where during the round, we look at every single grant you could have donated to, and we look at the anomalies in that, or how close you are to other donors in your funding pattern. Here's an idea where we gotta say, okay, how can we compound these? Like on the grant side, we've done a thing called OnChain Intersectionality, where we look at very high quality signals. Like if you bought a $1,000 premium subscription for Bankless, you have that NFT, probably not Sybil, right? You spent a lot of money to be a Sybil if you did. Now, we look at the wallets that we call burners that have nothing. They have no NFTs, no transactions. They have clear preferences. Now we can go back and look at the donors and say, if you preference the grants that were preferenced so much by the ones that we know are probably illegitimate, that's what's happening. And then we take each of those behaviors and we put it against our Thor and our Loki sets. These are our for sure known sybils and our for sure not sybils. And we try to say, like, all right, is this specific behavior actually giving us something? And doing this, we've stopped $3 million in fraudulent funding since grants round 9 in December of 2021 as a DAO. We also, at Gitcoin, just launched a protocol, our Allo protocol. We launched Passport. We launched a grant stack, which is 4 different interfaces for individual users in their persona to interact with those protocols. So building this as a DAO has been one of the most incredible things, but we started proprietary. Back in the day, we didn't really do Sybil defense at all. The first rounds, we were just kind of hoping. We started building reactive tools. Eventually, ZK Sync made the get transactions so cheap, we needed to figure out how to scale that, hired block science. I call it the BS era, before Sybil defense. Like, we literally did nothing and then started realizing there were problems. And this is what every community or program manager will go through if they don't use that great ability we have as humans to learn from what we already did. The next era, we started using machine learning so we could scale like human evaluations with human in the loop, semi-supervised reinforcement learning. We launched a trust bonus to weight users as they came in based on having other identity attestations. We launched the DAO and made it so the community owned the subjective decisions that are made along in this process. And then we got a little curveball when they introduced these cause rounds, which were like climate change, because all these noobs came in who didn't have GitHubs, which was our primary identifier. So now all our data is kind of like not what it was before. It doesn't tell the same story. So this was like the proprietary defense era, where the grants were reviewed for eligibility. We hired block science. We got the humans in the loop going. But it led us to the most recent things before the protocol. The last era is where we know the protocol is coming. The product, you might have used it and it was like, oh man, this is clunky. It's because we were really like, let's throw that away. Let's get to this Allo protocol here. And it means we were doing on-chain analysis. We decided we'd launch the open data community where we could actually crowdsource more of these things because the protocol is gonna be open. So C-Grants was like this crazy legacy code thing, and people didn't realize how many different levers and pieces were in there for you to make a decision. So the one thing I want you to take away today is to grow your community, you need legitimacy. And the reason people look at Gitcoin and say, hey, that's a cool tool, we want to be able to allocate our funds for our community like that is because they know they can trust the outcome. That was a lot of work, and that has all been made open to you. Kirchhoff's principle's idea in cryptography that even if the attacker knows exactly how your systems work, it still stays up. It's more expensive to attack it than to defend it. And we're going with that model with open data. We now have our Passport, which gives you a transparent and auditable history to how you applied algorithms to somebody. So you can use algorithmic policy in a transparent and auditable way. It lets you gate or weight access to any decision making. We have the Sybil scoring Legos. It says we were running machine learning, but we lost comprehensibility. Humans didn't know exactly why. Well, we can have the benefits of machine learning for the accuracy, but then each Lego that's open source, Docker packaged and put out there so you can switch into the your machine learning algorithm very quickly. This lets a non-technical round manager say, oh, your account wasn't allowed because you received your initial gas from a wallet that also funded initial gas for 10 or more other wallets that donated in this round. You had over 200 transactions in under 30 minutes at some point in the history of the wallet. It is obviously that this has done some bad behavior. And now we have this open data community even innovating dashboards so you can plug and play new Legos, because Sybil resistance is an infinite game. That means it goes on. It's an iterative process. So when we do something new to stop them coming in the front door, they try the back door, right? So we're Kevin McAllister here having to come up with new ways to stop them constantly, and we think we can do that even with them knowing how we're stopping them, by crowdsourcing and bringing you all into it, by having open data on the protocol and the economies of scale benefits between you and every other community. This open data community can continue innovating for the new solutions that are needed. And the point is, if you look at Gitcoin, you're like, I want one of those. I want to be able to allocate funds in the way that they do with a trusted outcome. Now that we've released the protocol, you get economies of scale benefits. You get the benefit of every other person in here going through the same issues, and you get the benefits of knowledge that stopped $3 million in fraudulent attacks over the last year and a half. And that's in your toolbox to give your community trust that you as a program manager are making sure that the outcomes are legitimate and they don't have to trust you. All our processes and tools are fully open, transparent, auditable, and reproducible. Find me another protocol that does that, and I will gladly, hands down, walk away. But that's why you want to allocate your funds with the Allo protocol. That's it.